My sister gave me a thank you card. For the house. Not a check that mattered, not a conversation, a card. The kind that comes in a pack of 8 from the drugstore, with a watercolor flower on the front and the words thank you printed inside in gold script so you don't even have to think of your own. She wrote 3 lines under the printed part. I still have it. I know them by heart. Thank you for understanding, Nora. It means the world to me. You've always been the strong one. You've always been the strong one. That's the sentence people use when they've taken something from you and they need you to carry it without complaining. The house I grew up in went to my sister Meredith. The house our parents lived in for 31 years. The house with the pencil marks on the kitchen door frame and the crooked step by the back door that my father never fixed and the smell of my mother's hand cream in the hall closet. It went to Meredith. And I got a card. I want to be honest with you about something before I go any further. For a long time, I told this story as if I were the fool in it. The pushover. The sister who let herself be robbed with a smile and a piece of stationery. But that's not the whole story. Because what Meredith didn't know, that day she handed me the card, what she still didn't know 3 years later, when she called me needing my signature, was that the house was never really hers. Not to keep, not to sell, not to give me a card about. But maybe it's better if I start at the beginning. Because to understand why a thank you card can break a person, you have to understand what it costs to be the second daughter. My name is Nora. I have one sister, Meredith, older than me by 4 years. And from the time I was old enough to understand anything, I understood one thing very clearly. Meredith was the one. I don't say that with bitterness anymore. It took me a long time to be able to say it without bitterness, and I'll tell you how I got there. But when I was a child, it was simply the weather of my life, the air I breathed. Meredith was the one, and I was the other one. She was the pretty one, the easy one. The one who looked like our mother's side of the family, which mattered to our mother in a way she never would have admitted. When Meredith brought home a good grade, there was cake. When I brought home a better grade, there was, "That's nice, honey." "Did you see your sister made the honor roll?" I'm not making that up to sound tragic. That is an actual sentence my mother said in our actual kitchen, and I remember it because I was 11 and I had studied for 2 weeks, and I stood there holding my report card while she talked about Meredith's. You learn things as the second daughter. You learn to need less. You learn to take up less room. You learn to be the strong one, because being the strong one means no one has to worry about you, and being no one's worry is the closest thing to being loved that some of us ever get. I got very good at needing nothing. I left as soon as I could, went to a state school 4 hours away, the cheap one. On a scholarship I earned myself because there wasn't money for me the way there had somehow always been money for Meredith. I built a life out there, a small one, an ordinary one. A job at an insurance office, a 1-bedroom apartment, a cat, a few good friends, a man I dated for a while and then didn't. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every inch of it was mine, and I had built it without anyone's help, and there was a quiet pride in that. Meredith stayed. She stayed in our hometown, 3 streets from our parents. She married a man named Paul who sold cars and did well at it. She had the nice house and the nice car and the 2 kids and the standing lunch with our mother every Thursday. And she stayed close. I need you to remember that word, close, because it becomes important. Meredith stayed close, and staying close is a thing that looks like love from the outside and can be something much more complicated on the inside. Our father died first, a stroke when I was 32, fast. He was gone before I could get on a plane. I got there in time for the funeral and not a minute sooner, and Meredith made sure everyone knew it. Nora couldn't get here in time, she told the relatives in that soft, sad voice. She lives so far away now. As if the distance were a choice I'd made to hurt them, and not the only way I'd ever found to breathe. After Dad died, our mother declined slowly. Years of it. And Meredith was the one who managed it. The appointments, the medications, the slow, grinding, unglamorous work of watching a parent disappear. I want to give her that. I do. It was real work, and she did it, and I was 4 hours away doing my own small life. I came when I could. I sent money when I could. I called every Sunday. But I was the one who left, and Meredith was the one who stayed, and in our family's arithmetic, staying was worth everything, and leaving was a debt you could never repay. My mother made that arithmetic very clear. Toward the end, when her mind wandered, she used to talk about the house, about who would have it, and it was always the same. Meredith will have the house, she'd say, patting Meredith's hand, right in front of me. She's the one who stayed. She's the one who takes care of me. You understand, don't you, Nora? You have your own life out there. You have your own life out there. Said like a door closing, and I would nod, because I was the strong one, because I needed nothing, because I had spent 30 years learning that the fastest way to be left alone was to agree that I deserved less, so I agreed. I agreed all the way up until the day my mother died, which was a gray Tuesday in November, with Meredith holding one of her hands and me holding the other, 4 hours too late to have been there for most of it, but there for the end. I flew home for the funeral, and I stayed a week to help settle things. Except there was nothing for me to help settle, because Meredith had already settled it. She had a lawyer. Our family's lawyer, a soft-spoken man named Dale Coburn, who had done our parents' affairs for 20 years and who called me young lady, even though I was 36. Meredith had it all arranged before I even landed. I've handled everything, she told me in the kitchen on my second day home. You don't have to worry about a thing. I know how busy you are. I know how busy you are. Another one of those sentences. She explained it to me gently, the way you explain a decision that's already been made and that you have no intention of reopening. The house would stay in the family. She would keep it. It made sense, she said, because she was here, because her kids had grown up visiting it, because Mom had always wanted it that way. Mom had always wanted it that way. And I stood in that kitchen, under the door frame with the pencil marks, and I felt the old weather settle over me. The second daughter weather. The you have your own life out there weather. And I did the thing I had done my whole life. I made myself small. I made myself agree. Okay, I said. That makes sense. Meredith's whole body relaxed. I remember it. The relief that went through her when I didn't fight. She had been braced for a battle, and I had handed her the war before the first shot. You've always been the strong one, she said. And she hugged me, and I let her, and something inside me that had been alive since I was 11 years old laid down quietly and went still. A few days later, she gave me the card. She put a check inside it, $2,000. For the plane tickets and everything, she said, and a little extra. You deserve it. $2,000 and a thank you card for my half of a house worth more than $300,000. I took it. I said thank you. I told her it was generous. And I flew back to my small, ordinary 4 hours away life, and I put the card in a drawer, and I told myself it was over. Here's the part I've never told anyone. Before I left that week, Dale Coburn gave me a folder, copies of the paperwork. For your records, young lady, he said, and I took it the way I take all paper, because I am the kind of person who keeps things, warranties, receipts, old birthday cards. The habit of a person who was never sure anyone would keep anything for her, so she learned to keep it herself. I read the folder on the plane, and inside it was our mother's will, the real one, the signed one, the legal one, and it did not say what Meredith said. It said it didn't leave the house to Meredith. It divided everything, the house, the savings, all of it, equally, between her two daughters, 50-50. I read it 3 times on that plane, with the drink cart rattling in the aisle and a baby crying 2 rows back. My mother, who spent her whole life telling me I was the other one. My mother, who patted Meredith's hand and said the house was hers. My mother, whatever she said out loud, had sat down at some point with Dale Coburn and signed a piece of paper that said her 2 daughters were equal. I don't know why. I've thought about it for years and I still don't know. Maybe some private guilt. Maybe some flicker of fairness she couldn't say out loud but could put her name to. Maybe she wrote it years earlier and forgot what it said. I'll never know now. But the fact was there, in black ink. Half of that house was mine, legally, actually. Half of it was mine, and Meredith had handed me a card and a check for $2,000, and I had said thank you. And do you know what I did with that information? Nothing. I want you to sit with that, because I have. I knew. I had it in writing. I had proof, in a folder, in my own hands, that I had been cheated out of $150,000 by my own sister, and I did nothing. I told myself a story about why. I told myself I didn't want the fight. I told myself Meredith had earned it by staying, by changing the sheets, by doing the years of work I hadn't done. I told myself the money didn't matter, that I had my own life, that I was above it, but that wasn't the truth. The truth was uglier and simpler than that. The truth was that I still believed her. I still believed my mother. I still, somewhere underneath everything, believed that I was the other one, that I deserved less. That fighting for my half would be greedy, unnatural, wrong, because the whole architecture of my family was built on the understanding that Meredith got things and I did not. The will said I was equal. But 36 years of being the second daughter said I wasn't, and I believed the 36 years. So I put the folder in a box, and I put the box in a closet, and I put the closet out of my mind, and I let my sister keep a house that was half mine, and I called it peace. It wasn't peace. It was just the old silence, wearing a new coat. 3 years went by. I'm not going to pretend they were dramatic. They weren't. They were just years. I worked. I got a promotion I was proud of. My cat died and I got another one. I dated a kind man named Tom who did not make me feel like the other one, and that was so unfamiliar that it took me almost a year to trust it. Meredith and I drifted, the way sisters do when one of them is quietly holding half a house the other one lives in. We talked on birthdays. She sent a Christmas card every year, one of those photo cards with her family and matching sweaters, and every year I looked at it and thought about a different card, the one in my drawer, and then I put the thought away. I thought, at peace with it. I really did think that. And then, on a Tuesday in March, my phone rang, and it was Meredith, and she was using a voice I hadn't heard from her in years. Warm, sweet. The voice she used to use when she wanted something. "Nora, hi, how are you? How's Tom?" God, it's been forever. My sister had not called me first, just to talk, and longer than I could remember. I knew immediately that she needed something. I just didn't know yet that what she needed was the one thing in the world that was going to set me free. She danced around it for a while, asked about my job, told me about the kids, told me Paul's dealership was doing great, which I would later understand was not exactly true, and then she got to it. "So, listen," she said, "the reason I'm calling. We're thinking of selling the house." Something in my chest went very still. Mom's house? Well, my house. But yeah, the old house. Paul and I found this place out by the lake. It's perfect, and honestly, the old house is just too much upkeep and the market's good right now, So? Okay, I said carefully. That's a big decision. It is. And here's the thing, and this is so silly, but Dale says there's some paperwork from Mom's estate that never got fully finished, some formality. Your name is on something, from way back, and apparently we just need you to sign a little form so we can clear the title and sell. It's nothing. It's literally just a signature. I feel terrible even bothering you with it. I sat down at my kitchen table. And I want to describe to you exactly what I felt in that moment, because it surprised me. I did not feel angry. I felt awake. For 3 years, that folder in my closet had been a thing I was ashamed of, a thing I'd buried. And in one phone call, my sister had reached across 4 hours and 4 decades and handed me the reason to dig it back up. She thought she was asking me for a formality. She thought my name on the deed was an old clerical error, a smudge to be wiped clean so she could take her lake house and drive away. She did not know that the smudge was worth $150,000. She did not know that I knew. And in that moment, I understood something that I had spent 3 years refusing to understand. The signature she needed was not a favor she was asking of me. It was the first time in my entire life that my sister needed something that only I could give. Before we go on, if this story is pulling you in, take a second to subscribe. It's the only way to know when the next one goes up. And if a betrayal like this has ever happened to someone you know, tell me in the comments. I read them. Now let me tell you what happened next. "Of course," I said. My voice was perfectly calm. "When did you want to do this?" "Really? Oh, Nora, thank you. Could you come home?" "Dale likes to do these things in person. Next weekend, I'll make it worth the trip, I promise." "I'll make it worth the trip, sure," I said. "I'll come home." I flew home the following Saturday. I brought the folder. I don't want you to think I had some grand plan, some cold strategy plotted out on the plane. I didn't. I still didn't fully know what I was going to do. Part of me, the old part, the small part, thought maybe I'd just sign the thing, be the strong one, keep the peace. But I brought the folder. And I brought the card, the thank you card, the one with the watercolor flower and the gold script. I took it out of the drawer where it had lived for 3 years, and I put it in my bag next to my mother's will, and I did not let myself think too hard about why. Meredith had set the whole thing up at the house. Of course she had. She wanted it done there, in the house, on her home ground, surrounded by the evidence that it was hers. She'd even cleaned. There were fresh flowers on the table where our mother used to sit, and she hadn't come alone. Paul was there, in a golf shirt, shaking my hand too firmly. Dale Coburn was there, older now, with his folder of papers laid out neat on the table. And our Aunt Carol was there, our mother's sister, who had spent my whole childhood agreeing that Meredith was the one and I was the other one. Meredith had brought witnesses. I understood why. She thought she was staging a gentle little ceremony of pressure, The family, gathered, warm, so that the strong one would sign quickly and not make a fuss. She had assembled an audience to watch me be small one more time. She had assembled an audience. I have thought since then about how often people build the exact stage on which they will be undone. She wanted witnesses to my surrender. She was going to get witnesses to something else. We sat around the table. There was coffee, there was small talk. Aunt Carol told me I looked tired. And then Dale slid a paper across the table toward me and uncapped a pen and set it on top and said, "Just here at the bottom, young lady, and here, and we'll be all done." I looked at the paper. I looked at the pen. And then I did the thing that changed everything, which was not dramatic at all. I simply did not pick up the pen. Before I sign anything, I said, "I'd like to understand what I'm signing." Meredith laughed lightly. "Nora, it's nothing. It's a formality," Dale explained. "I'd still like to understand it." "Dale." I turned to him. "What does my signature do, exactly?" Dale Coburn shifted in his chair. He was an honest man at heart, and I was about to make his afternoon very uncomfortable. "Well," he said, "your name appears on the title to the property as a matter of the original estate. Signing this conveys your interest so that the sale can proceed cleanly." "My interest," I said. "What is my interest?" A pause. "Nora," Meredith said, and there was an edge coming into the sweetness now. "What are you doing, Dale?" I said again gently. "What is my legal interest in this house?" And Dale Coburn, God bless him, could not lie to a direct question. He was a lawyer, not a liar, and there is a difference, and it cost Meredith everything. "As the estate stands," he said slowly, "and as it was never formally closed, Miss Timer Pramley. Nora is a 50% owner of the property." The room went silent. "That's not right," Meredith said. Her voice had changed completely. "That's not. Mom left the house to me. Dale, tell him. Tell her. Mom wanted me to have the house." "Your mother said that," Dale said carefully. "But the will divides the estate equally. It always did. I did advise settling it properly at the time, Meredith. It was never done." I reached into my bag, and I took out the folder, and I took out my mother's will, the real one, the signed one, and I laid it on the table where our mother used to sit. And then I took out the thank you card and I laid it down right next to the will, side by side, the watercolor flower, the gold script. "Thank you." Next to a legal document that said I owned half the house we were sitting in. I didn't say anything for a moment. I just let them look at the two pieces of paper. "You gave me this," I finally said, and touched the card. "And the law gave me that." I touched the will. For 3 years, I let the card be the true one. I want you to understand that. I chose the card. Because I was raised to believe the card was all I was worth. Meredith was staring at the will like it was a snake. "You knew," she said. "You've known this whole time. You've known for 3 years and you let me." "I let you keep it," I said. "Yes, I gave it to you. But I never signed it away, Meredith, because you never asked me to. You never asked me to give up my half, because it never once occurred to you that I had one. You didn't cheat me on purpose. That's almost the worst part. You didn't even have to try. You just assumed I was nothing, the way you were taught to, the way we were both taught to, and you built your whole life on that assumption without ever checking whether it was true." The room was so quiet I could hear the old clock in the hall, the one that had ticked through my entire childhood. Paul was staring at his wife. Aunt Carol was staring at the will, and Meredith was staring at me like she was seeing me, actually seeing me, for the first time in 36 years. And then she broke. Not the way I expected. I expected anger. I had braced for fury, for her to call me a liar, a thief, an ungrateful sister who came back to tear apart the family. Instead, she started to cry. And what came out of her was not what I expected either. "You think I won?" she said. Her voice was shaking. "You've spent your whole life thinking I won. The favorite. The one who got everything. You gotta leave, Nora. Do you understand that? You gotta leave. You built a whole life out there 4 hours away with your job and your cat and you gotta become a person." She wiped her face with the back of her hand, the way she did when we were kids. I stayed. Because I was the one who stayed. That was my whole— I changed her diapers. Do you know that? At the end. I changed our mother's diapers, and I cleaned her, and I sat with her at 3 in the morning when she didn't know who I was and called me by your name. She called me Nora at the end, the favorite. She wanted you. I hadn't known that. I gave her 15 years, Meredith said. I never left this town. I never got to find out who I'd be somewhere else, because I was the one who stayed, and staying ate my whole life, and the only thing I ever got for it was a house. That's it. That was my payment, one house. And now you're telling me half of it was always yours. She laughed, a terrible broken sound. We were both being punished, she said. I just couldn't see your half of it, and you couldn't see mine. I want to tell you that in that moment I felt triumphant. I didn't. I want to be honest with you about how it actually felt, because it wasn't clean, and I don't trust stories where the ending is clean. It felt like grief, because she was right, not about everything, but about the shape of it. We were two daughters raised by people who divided their love unevenly and never told either of us the truth of it. Meredith got the words and the presents and the house, and it turned into a cage that ate 15 years of her life. I got the distance and the freedom and the will that said I was equal, and it turned into a silence that ate 30 years of my sense of worth. Neither of us had won. We had just been handed different halves of the same wound and spent our whole lives envying each other for the half we couldn't see. But, and I need you to hear this, because it's the whole reason I'm telling you this at all. Understanding my sister's pain did not mean I had to keep paying for it. For 36 years, I had made myself small so that other people could feel comfortable. I had swallowed my half of everything and called it strength. And here, finally, was a moment where I could see clearly that the person who had taken from me had also been hurt, that she was human, that her cruelty had a reason. And the old Nora would have used that as permission to disappear again, to sign the paper, to say, "You've suffered enough, keep the house, I understand." To be the strong one final time. I didn't do that. I'm sorry about all of it, I told her, and I meant it. About Mom calling you my name, about the 15 years. I didn't know, and I'm sorry, and I mean that with my whole heart. Meredith looked up at me. But I'm not signing my half away, I said. The house sells, and I take my half of what it's worth. Not because I want to punish you, because it's mine. It was always mine. And I have spent my entire life letting this family tell me that what was mine didn't count. Nora, I'm not the strong one, Meredith. My voice was very steady. I never was. I was just the one who was easiest to take from, and I'm done being that. That's all this is. She was quiet for a long moment. And then, slowly, she nodded. Not in agreement exactly, in recognition. The same look I'd seen a few minutes earlier. The look of a woman finally seeing her sister as a whole person, with a whole claim and a whole worth that had been there the entire time. Okay, she said quietly. And that, okay, was the first honest thing that had passed between us in 30 years. The house sold that summer. I took my half, a little over $160,000 after everything. I'm not going to pretend the money didn't matter, because it did. It bought Tom and me a small house of our own, with a crooked step by the back door that reminds me of my father's, and I did not fix it either, and I understand him a little better now. Meredith and Paul did not get the lake house. It turned out the dealership was in more trouble than she let on, and her half went mostly to debts I never asked about. I found out later that the sale, the one she needed my signature for so badly, was less about a dream house and more about staying afloat. I could tell you that gave me satisfaction. It didn't. We are not close now, Meredith and I. I won't lie to you and give you the ending where the sisters heal and laugh over coffee. Some things don't come back. But we're honest now, in the small ways we manage to be honest. She calls sometimes, not when she needs something, just to talk. She asks about Tom. She tells me about the kids. And last Christmas the photo card came, the one with the matching sweaters. And underneath the printed message she'd written something by hand. I'm glad you took your half. You were right. Love, Mer. I keep that one too, right next to the other card. The thank you card. The one from 3 years before, with the gold script and the watercolor flower. I keep them side by side, the way I once laid the card and the will side by side on our mother's table, because together they tell the whole story. I've told you all of this, and I want to be honest with you about why. It isn't to make my sister a villain. I hope you can tell she isn't one. She was a woman handed a cage and told it was a crown, and she carried it the only way she knew how. And it isn't really about a house, or a will, or $160,000. It's about the card. Because here is the thing about the card. When Meredith gave it to me, it wasn't the cruelty that broke me. It was that I agreed with it. It was that some part of me looked at that watercolor flower and that gold script and that check for $2,000 and thought, yes, that sounds about right. That's about what I'm worth. That's the real theft, not the house. The house I got back. The real theft was 36 years of believing the card. So if you are the second child, the other one, the one who learned to need nothing so that no one would have to worry about you, I want to tell you something. Somewhere, there is a will, not on paper maybe, but somewhere, in the true accounting of your life, there is a document that says you are always equal, that what was taken from you counted, that the smallest, cheapest version of your worth that someone once handed you was never the real one. You don't have to keep believing the card, and someday, in the strangest room, at a table you never expected, someone is going to need something that only you can give. And on that day, I hope you remember, you were never the other one. You were only the one they found easiest to take from, and that is not the same thing at all. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the ones still coming. And tell me, what would you like the next story to be about? I'll be reading you in the comments.